All right, so what do a middle school science teacher turned tech director and a former competitive stunt diver have in common? Well, you're about to find out. Please welcome Dan Carroll and Craig Narveson to the studio. Did I say your name right?
Close. Narveson.
Narveson. Okay, Narveson. Hi, guys.
It's so great to be here.
I'm excited to have you guys here because EdTech is so fascinating, especially during this moment. So Dan, tell us how you went from being a teacher to a tech director and a startup founder. That's a crazy leap.
Mostly by complaining about things. So I taught middle school science. We watched a lot of Mythbusters. It was amazing. But the technology in my school didn't work. You know, the email server would go down, you'd take out the laptops and some of them would be broken, or students would forget their usernames and passwords. And so I, kind of raised a stink about it and complained my way into a promotion to become the director of data and technology. And I was so excited to take the role. I had this list of like 25 different problems I was gonna solve in my first year. And I got maybe one problem through the list because I ran into new problems that I started complaining about. I spent all my time kind of shuffling data from one system to another instead of working with teachers and students and actually helping technology work. And so I complained so much that two of my best friends from college said, we're tired of this and we need to start a company to solve these problems. And so that was in 2012 and the company was called Clever. And we've built a way, single sign-on and data integration for K-12 schools that over 20 million students and teachers use every month. 20 million. That is huge. All right, Craig, you're the director and partner at Cahoots. Last year, Kahoot purchased Clever for $500 million. That's more than a teacher's salary, isn't it? Why was this a good acquisition for Kahoot, and what are your plans?
That's a big
That's a big
double question.
Yeah.
Well, first, I think we, of course, we think it's a great acquisition. And speaking from the partnerships perspective, if you look at the partners that Clever works with and the partners that Kahoot works with, the technology works, and that's why partners work with us. But more importantly, it's two companies that are very mission-driven. And we are both passionate about leveraging technology to improve education. And we're fully committed to empowering educators and students in learning. If you look at how Kahoot is, Dan already mentioned the usage of Clever in the US, which I think is 90,000 schools, K through 12 schools.
Something like that.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, and of those, it's I think 96, you can keep me honest with the numbers, 96 of the top 100 districts.
Yep.
Slightly different from the model that Kahoot has had historically, which is direct to the teacher. So with the combination, Kahoot will be able to not just support the teachers directly, but also schools and districts. So it makes a lot of sense from the Kahoot perspective. And then Kahoot's global kind of penetration, we are used by over 9 million teachers around the world in over 200 countries. And we believe very strongly in the Clever model as a convenient way, very low friction way to have access to great learning content to support engagement and learning. So
friction is important in a classroom.
It's like a live performance. If one thing goes wrong, the whole lesson falls apart. And on the Clever side, we've always wanted to be a global company, but it's been really daunting. We've really stuck to the United States. But we're so excited as part of the Kahoot family to take our product internationally and to learn from all the great international and global work Kahoot's done.
I mean, I looked at your list of partnerships. You have some heavy hitters in there. You're very good at your job. All right. So both Clever and Kahoot were finalists in the Launch Startup Competition in 2013, but Clever won.
here we go.
Yeah, the competition.
Always comes back.
Fast forward now, and Kahoot acquired Clever. So both startups achieved significant success, forging new ground in EdTech in that space. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, let me first just say, in Kahoot lingo, we're both at the top of the podium now. When you win a Kahoot game, you're at the top of the podium. So,
just like the Olympics.
Yeah, so we're here together, which is very, very exciting. But I'll let you, Dan, answer that question.
The launch competition, so I was the one who pitched, but the launch competition was such a transformative moment in Clever's history. We started as 3 college friends in a garage, asking schools to trust us with some of the most sensitive data and to, we had a vision of creating this ecosystem of ed tech tools where everything just worked together and teachers, weren't frustrated with technology. But early on, it was just a vision, and we had to get people to trust us. We had to build up some of our partnerships. And being on the launch stage and being able to tell our story and share our vision and, to the amazing South by Southwest education audience, and then, being lucky enough to be able to take home the prize was a huge step forward in our company's growth. And, that sort of network of bringing some more schools on board and bringing some more application partners on board, once that network got big enough, it sort of took off and exploded because the larger the network, the more valuable it was and the more folks wanted to join.
Wow, startup life. And I gotta say, a lot of companies were a couple college kids in a garage where I come from, Apple. So
we were the boring ones. We did actually graduated. We didn't drop out. But
oh man,
You have the better hair though.
that's all right. So Dan, Clever spends a lot of time listening to teachers and administrators. What are educators telling you that they need today? What are the biggest technology frustrations?
Educators today need a break.
Yeah.
It has been, I was in the classroom. It's never been easy to be a teacher. We ask teachers to do so much, and we never give them more time or more resources or more pay. But the past 3 years, all the teachers I know are at their breaking point. It was amazing to see the way that everyone in education stepped up to the challenge of COVID and did everything from delivering laptops to students' homes to creating lunches for families to pick up who maybe needed some extra food to learning new tech tools overnight because that's what students needed. And the effort was incredible, but it's like folks have been running the 100-yard sprint, and then it just gets another 100 yards and another 100 yards, and now it's been a marathon, and there's been no rest station. There's been no way to rest and recharge. So I think the number one thing we need to do is we need to find a way as a society and as edtech vendors to just make teachers' lives easier, to give them fewer things to worry about, to allow them to spend more time on the relationships that they need are so valuable for them to have with their students. And so, at Clever and with Kahoot and many of our partners, we think a lot about, we observe classrooms. We try to iron out the bumps in the road. We try to just read teachers' minds. So the thing that they might need next pops up in front of them. And so that's the kind of work that we do. But I think the challenge is even bigger than that as a society. We need to pay teachers more. We need to reduce class sizes. Those are the real changes that we need to make to be able to make teaching a viable and sustainable profession.
I agree with all of those things. That has been a constant topic of conversation at this convention. So, Craig, Kahoot, quiz technology is currently being used by more than 9 million schools globally, which you mentioned.
Teachers.
Yeah.
Schools.
Why do electronic games work better than traditional quizzes?
Well, there are a lot of electronic games. So I'll speak to Kahoot
Yes.
as an electronic game, if I may. Kahoot, when it is used in the classroom, it introduces the language of play into learning. And play really is our first language for learning. And there have been several dozens of studies published on the kind of the use of games to increase the dynamic in the classroom, making it more positive, increasing learner focus and interest in learning, and improved outcomes. So, and that, back from South by Southwest, Kahoot has evolved dramatically, and through COVID was used in ways that obviously weren't in the classroom, but it was a connective tissue for most educators using it to engage and be close to their students remotely and to check in with them. And we have new features and functionality that allow students not just to kind of retrieve knowledge, which the keynote speaker from Monday mentioned is
I was
the
just
key.
thinking
Yes.
about that, retrieval learning.
Yes, very important, and reduces anxiety, also improving outcomes when you can kind of do something fun, low stress, and kind of bring back through a formative assessment type of approach, which Kahoot supports, to feel very confident in what you're learning. But also, with the new features we've been able to add since 2013, the ability for students to offer ideas, brainstorming, and being more part of the creative process with others. And there's a social aspect to it of it as well, which of course is sort of foundationally part of our product.
Maybe putting a game to it means you don't have that partner that you have in school where you do all the slides and they don't do anything.
That's when you use team mode on Kahoot.
Yeah.
You have to work together.
Not that I'm bringing things up from my junior high experience, but
We share
hey.
the same experience, for sure.
Schools have had to scramble over the past couple years with remote learning, organizing Zoom calls, learning how to share information. Are those technologies here to stay, even though the schools are reopening?
That's been the million-dollar question.
Right.
Or maybe billion-dollar question. And we know that there are some tools that aren't going to be used every single day, right? When classes go back into session, we're not going to have teachers logging into Zoom when their students are in the room, right? But we actually asked that question at Clever to a panel of administrators and teachers. We said, you know, you've adopted many, many new tools throughout to make remote learning work. What do you think about them? Are they going to stay, or was this just kind of a flash in the pan? Are we going to go back to the way things were before? And what we heard is that the vast majority of teachers said that the majority of tools that they adopted during the pandemic, they want to keep and they want to continue in their classroom. And they're going to use them in different ways, right? Because they're going to be able to have the benefits of in-person learning. But maybe not even, like, you know, we've seen districts that, this is, sorry to all the kids out there, but when it's a snow day, they keep on learning,
that.
right?
We totally ruined snow days for kids.
I think districts are being really careful. I think it's like,
Still
you
have to
know,
teach.
1 or 2 snow days is okay, but when you get to that point where it starts to really cut into learning, that's when we bring out the Zooms. But, you know, on Clever, we saw a massive spike in teachers adopting new tools and districts adopting new tools, and we haven't seen any decreases. If anything, schools are continuing to adopt new tools, and because the skills and capabilities are there in the classroom. The devices are there, teachers are trained, and we really have the ability to bring even more wonderful, engaging, and productive tools into the
I
classroom.
imagine it's also going to make it easier to be a substitute because there's kind of these things are presented for you.
Yeah, substitutes have a tough job these days.
Tough job.
You know, you're stepping into a classroom where you don't know kids' names and you don't know the technology, and you may not even, you know, that's actually one challenge we're working on at Clever is how can we make sure substitutes have access to all the different tools? Like, what's their login if they're only coming to the school for a day? But yeah, I think that engaging things like Kahoot, where you just put it up on the projector and all of a sudden students are just riveted, makes life so much easier for anyone who's in the classroom.
Yeah, let's make it easier for all of them. So what role do teachers and students play in your product development, and do you beta test with them?
I can
Yeah, you wanna
offer,
start?
from the Kahoot perspective, our users are obviously the most important part of our product development. And we have a team at Kahoot that's focused on engaging the educators. It's our Kahoot Academy team. And on Kahoot, you would see the content that's available to play, freely available to play right now, and will continue to be freely available to play in the future, from educators. So we work with a large group of Kahoot ambassador teachers, as well as a verified educator group as well. So they know their subjects, they know their students the best, and we give them a place to share their content and knowledge, and also insights. We have a number of features that have come directly through you know, our pedagogy team and working closely with educators to know that, hey, we love Kahoot, but there always isn't time in class. We want to use it so much more. So we developed functionality so educators could send Kahoot as homework for their class to play as a group, but asynchronously. So you can still get that fun social play experience, but not in the classroom for those types of experiences. That's just one example. But it's all about increasing the ability for educators to access the technology in the ways that they are hoping to.
Yeah, that's great.
If I can add one thing that we're doing on the Clever side is we're doing a lot of work this year around inclusive design. So we've always listened to teachers, we've always listened to students, we've always given them early access to our new features and products, but we've usually listened to the folks who are the loudest, or the folks who we know the best, who are the most engaged. And those people are amazing, and we're never going to stop listening to them, but we realize that they're not always representative of all of the teachers and all the students in the US, and certainly not abroad. And so we started to do things as we do user research and as we recruit to make sure that we're bringing folks in with all sorts of different types of diversity, whether that's race or gender or years of experience or comfort and familiarity with technology, to make sure that we're really designing tools for every classroom and not just the ones that, you know, are the loudest.
Right, right. I appreciate that. How important is, I mean, this is a silly question, how important is cybersecurity and what steps should schools be taking right now? Yeah, after being on a Zoom that was hacked, and some really wild stuff showed up in front of my kid, I know how important cybersecurity is.
Oh, those Zoom bombings
Oh
in the early
my
days.
gosh.
Yeah, we actually did a partnership with Zoom that allowed basically only authenticated students who had logged into their Clever account to join Zooms, so that someone random on the internet couldn't just find the link and jump right in. And we built that partnership in a hurry in response to incidents like that one. Cybersecurity is such a huge issue. I mean, across our entire society. I mean, we see parts of the war right now in Ukraine being fought through cyber attacks. And schools are an especially challenging area to secure. IT staffs are under budget and understaffed all too often. They don't have the resources of Fortune 500 companies, and we see even Fortune 500 companies get hacked. I remember when I was a tech director, one of the normal practices was to take a bunch of information about students and send it, download it onto my computer and email it over to a vendor, and data was just everywhere.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we focus on at Clever is making sure that it is important. Like, data has to be shared. If a student's if a student is going to use a piece of software, that software needs to know their email address. So we need to make sure that those transfers will happen. But how can we make sure that we're sharing the least amount of data possible, so that data isn't ending up in all these different sources, and that when data is transferred, it's always being done over a secure, encrypted form of transfer. So that's one way that we've been thinking about this a lot. But there's so many other issues that schools need to be aware of. Ransomware and phishing, and securing their Zoom rooms. One great organization that I love is COSIN, which is kind of a community of IT directors they've done an amazing work creating resources for IT directors on how do you improve your cybersecurity posture and make sure that your school isn't the one that's getting on the news for some sort of terrible incident.
Yep, I agree with everything you're saying. So how was remote learning impacted, or how does remote learning impact the future of the textbook?
Well, I do think, I grew up with the World Book Encyclopedia, and
it's very heavy.
It is, the whole volume. I believe, and I think this is pretty well accepted, that there will always be a place for traditional materials such as physical books. That being said, I think that the pandemic has kind of put the magnifying glass on the fact that so many rich digital tools are so easily accessible and available for learning. And I think that educators have been very creative and in many cases courageous to bring in those new tools when they had to, because the textbooks couldn't be ported, or it's not so much fun to give an assignment to read 10 pages of a textbook versus, I'd like to say, send a Kahoot, or watch this fantastic video from this resource. There are a number of obviously digital learning resources that are available online, and going back to the root of your question, there will always be a place for more traditional textbook materials, but I think we will also see those evolve to adopt new ways of engaging the learner, whether it's putting QR codes or some other type of VR experience within those physical materials. I think it's going to be an exciting space to watch.
And textbooks need to be revamped and edited and brought up to standards, and they're so expensive, and it's such a burden.
Math books might always stay the same.
Yeah, but
the new math.
Maybe math is also, I'm sorry, but math when I was a kid is different than the math my
That's
kids
the new
do.
math,
And
yes.
the new math, there's French math, there's Chinese math, it's all different. So maybe not, but I do like the idea of being able to work with textbooks, but also the digital, because I hate watching kids with those giant backpacks just slumped over. They already have tech neck. Let's not get them any more on their backs.
I support that.
That's just personally. There you go. Little tiny people with big giant books.
Scoliosis is a real thing.
It's a real thing.
If tech can solve at least one problem, let's make it that. Yeah.
Okay, with more and more devices being brought from home by students, how can schools balance oversight with trust?
This is such a tricky
huge.
question.
I know.
And I have to say, I feel very lucky that this is not an area where Clever, we don't build these kinds of tools. But the balance is so challenging for folks, in my previous position for tech directors to strike. On the one hand, we all value student privacy, and we do not want to be snooping on our students, and they need to have spaces where they can express themselves and build relationships with peers and do all the things that kids do in school. At the same time, we know that there are real harms, things like cyberbullying and mental health challenges, and students who are maybe at risk of harming themselves. And we want to do everything we can to make sure that we discover those challenges and help those kinds of students. And I don't know the right balance between those things, but I know that some things that must be true is that students and parents need to know what their rights are and how schools are treating their privacy. I know that there's different rules and different policies for what happens on a school device, whether it's at school or at home, versus a private device. We need to make sure that students have their privacy on their own devices and their own time. And how we balance making sure that we help students who need it with privacy, I think it's a really tough challenge, and it's one that I hope, I almost laugh as I say this, but I hope that parents and school boards and school leaders can have really productive and constructive conversations about. And I know that's hard. I know that's hard to imagine in this day and age, but we need those kinds of conversations because the right answer may not be the same for every single community, and different communities have different values, and parents may want different things in different schools.
Kids are getting so smart. My kid was in like a 4th grade class, and one of the kids hacked in and could get past all the walls that the school put up.
That was me when I was in 4th grade.
I was just like,
I figured out a way to play Minesweeper when we weren't supposed to be able to.
Be friends with that kid.
Yeah,
he's going to be in a garage someday inventing something, and you want to be his friend.
Acquired for $500 million.
Dan, how did your experience as a teacher help you as an entrepreneur and a business leader?
Yeah, I like to say that once you stood up in front of a room of 8th graders, everything else seems easy.
Better than VC?
Yeah, pitching VCs was nothing compared to the Shark Tank of 8th grade hormones. I feel so grateful for my time in the classroom, and I said this when I left and started Clever, that I hope that we can, Clever can play one small part of making making teaching a sustainable career. And if that happens, I would love to jump back into the classroom. I miss those day-to-day interactions with students so much. I think that there are weird things about the education system that are really hard to explain unless you've been a part of it. And I think having been a teacher and been a tech director allowed us to just take so many shortcuts as we built Clever. I think folks who maybe haven't had that firsthand experience assume oh, of course a teacher has 2 free hands and is sitting at their desk during a class period. And I know that I never had any free hands, and I was never at my desk. And maybe if I was lucky, I could hit a button on my phone. That might be the kind of interaction I could have in the middle of a class period. So I think you can get to that same level of insight through a lot of user research and empathy work, but I think we had a little bit of a shortcut because we had some of those firsthand experiences.
Yeah. So, Craig, you've been a competitive diver, a stunt diver, and actor. What attracted you to EdTech after all that?
Well, first, kudos to the South by Southwest EDU team for their research.
I've been waiting to hear the story. I don't know anything about it.
Well, it's not much of a story. I'm human. I have many different interests.
But these are particularly kind of crazy
would fall
fun interests.
in the extracurricular area, for sure. These are not a linear kind of one step led to the next step. These were all kind of in parallel, simultaneous. But since you bring it up, I think this highlights how every human is made of different dimensions and different areas where they are interested to explore their potential. And I would like to think that I have sort of just by gravity or fate found a company that is really endorsing and supporting the ability for every educator to achieve their greatest potential.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're taking giant risks when you are, I mean, this is crazy. Did you have any surprising moments that, you know, fun stories you could tell
Oh,
us?
many. Maybe for off air, but yes, I can share a few.
There's no such thing as off air. You didn't know this about him already?
I did not. I knew a lot of things. You know, he lives in New York and Oslo.
Yeah.
Master of partnerships, but I didn't know about the stunt diving.
I know, wild, right? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for stopping by this South by Southwest studio. It's been really fun talking to you, and I'm glad I've gotten this chance. And hello. Please stay tuned for all the rest of our interviews. You can find them at the South by Southwest EDU app. We're also going to have some more surprising and amazing guests coming in today. You can see the complete schedule at southbysouthwest.com/studio. All right, that's going to be it for now, and I guess I'll see you guys soon.